You're listening to the NVus Alien Podcast with your host, Heather Woodward, an award-winning psychic, supernatural author, and lover of all things true crime. On this show, we're going to deep dive into topics that don't usually see the light of day. The spooky, the weird, the macabre, the paranormal, and of course, aliens. Sit back, grab a cup of tea, and let's get on with the show.
You want answers, not motivational quotes pretending to be guidance. You want the truth that changes things. That's where I come in. I read energy like a detective. Your patterns, your blocks, the turning points you feel coming but can't name yet. I translate what the universe has already lined up for you. I'm Heather, psychic coach, witch. 25 years of helping people stop the self-sabotage and step into their power. If you're ready to move, text me 25224194447. Real guidance, real clarity. Zero games. That's me, 25224194447. Let's pull the cards and see what happens next. Now put your tinfoil hat on. Curiosity engaged. Let's get into the podcast.
My name is Coleman Atchley. I am a field investigator for Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations. I'm also a documentary filmmaker, if you want to call that. I don't know. That sounds, I don't know, full of myself or whatever, because I'm really not that great at it, I feel like, but it's something I enjoy doing. But I got into all this, oh gosh, years ago, back in, I think 2021, or no, 2022 is when my first documentary came out. Me and a few buddies of mine, we made a documentary about us getting into the world of Bigfoot research for the first time in Oklahoma. And so we just chronicled our journey into stepping into this world of Bigfoot and Bigfoot research and all that. And I had a lot of fun. And for me, that was really when I got into the research part of it. I got hooked on it, just filming it and talking to researchers and going out and doing field research and all that, actually going out there in places where people have encounters, and it's just really fun and really cool and super fascinating. And at that point, I reached out after that documentary came out. I reached out to Brian Terrell of Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations, found him on Facebook, and just I think I hit him up on email, and I just said, "Hey, man, are you in need of any more members?" And he was like, "Yeah, we're doing this thing over at Hayburn Lake, which is in Oklahoma. And if you want to come over to that, we're doing some research there. You're welcome to come join us." And so I met Brian and Eric, two of my good friends and fellow people, researchers of Red Dirt. And yeah, the rest is history. And started talking. And then late last year, I really had the itch to do another documentary. And so I told Brian, why don't we work on a project based off of our research and how we do things and all that. And then, yeah, so the rest went from there.
So what made you want to do Bigfoot specifically?
So obviously, I think Bigfoot, just cryptid wise, like everyone knows everyone's familiar. When it comes to cryptids, I feel like everyone is familiar with Bigfoot, such a popular phenomena or whatever you want to call it. And so for Red Dirt too, that's like our main thing that we research. Obviously, anything cryptid at all. Brian takes reports of all types of things, flying cryptids, you name it. If it's something that people have seen and reported to him in southern Kansas, Oklahoma, he takes those reports. Little people, deer woman, all that. But I feel like with my last documentary, one of the things I really love it and I'm proud of what me and my friends did, but I really wanted to do something when it comes to the research end of things. I look back on that first project and I cringe a little bit because we had no idea what we were doing. Like we were just mimicking stuff we had seen on TV with like hollering and whooping in the woods and all that. And I watched that, I just cringe. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I told Brian, I really want to do something that emphasizes like good research and how to research stuff like this, and he was all for it. And so that was, I would say, the main thing is I just wanted to do something showing, hey, like I don't know, something I could watch on my own and not cringe at when it comes to like how we're researching. And that's one of the things I'm really proud of with Whispers from the Woods is I feel like we showcase a little bit some of the techniques and the things that we do.
So what's your background with the paranormal? Because from the movie, it seemed like that's not your lane.
Brian calls me like the staple paranormal guy of the group now because
Okay.
ever since the documentary, Technically, before that, even, I was kind of, I'm still learning. I'm very much learning. I was in the beginning of getting into paranormal research. That's another thing, too, that's always really fascinated me as a kid, even. And grew up in a very, I would say, a very mildly haunted house. I had some stuff experience as a kid, me and my sister. And so I was always interested in it. And I think the Bigfoot thing helped make that easier for me to, hey, I'm in the Bigfoot cryptid world. Let me look into this. And so I've been to some places. I've investigated like Villisca. I've been to Sally House. I've been to some of the popular places. It was just, I always joke too that I guess what really got me into the more paranormal side of things was, and I talk about it in the documentary, the whole lady in white thing. And I've always joked like, I went to go look for Bigfoot and I found ghosts. I was not expecting that. And that was a big thing too. That was one of those experiences that like changes how you look at things, and that really was a huge thing that kind of veered the course of me getting more into paranormal research and realizing, hey, like this is a real phenomena that happens. I believed in it beforehand. I've always believed in it and I've always known it's real. But that was something that's, wow, there's no denying it at this point. But that was it for me for sure.
Yeah, you said something. We were on a panel together in Kansas at the BorderCon, and you said something that was really interesting to me, which made me watch the documentary. You said that it's weird how when you're looking for one thing, you always end up finding the phenomenon too. There's always a correlation,
Right.
and you said that you couldn't get around that. It seems to be like there's two lanes. There's Bigfoot people, and then there's paranormal people, and then there's a certain amount of people in the middle, but not as much. It's like usually Bigfoot people don't really believe in the paranormal or they're not really
Mhm.
open to it. On your journeys, have you noticed that as you're looking for Bigfoot, you're finding these other things?
Yes, yeah. That's what's super interesting. When I first got into this, the big predominant view in the Bigfoot world is the flesh and blood is the phrase that gets thrown to camp. Which usually just pretty much means like if someone says I'm a flesh and blood kind of guy, what they're saying is, hey, like I think these are just primates. I think all the whatever the theory is, relic hominids, descendants of Gigantopithecus, all this stuff. Pretty much, hey, these are just normal biological, like a species of animals or even humans, whatever that exists, and they're as natural as we are. There's nothing paranormal and that was the view I had just because all the researchers I talked to, that was their view. And I have all the respect in the world for them, and they do a lot of great research and everything like that. But the longer you spend in this, you start to hear reports and you get through the rabbit hole, and you'll hear the stuff about the mind speak, about cloaking, about all just this different types of stuff. And for me, it was the lady in white when I first started, and then I researched it and I found other people that were saying something similar. Like they would go into these hot spots and they would have these lady in white encounters where they would see like a this apparition of a woman in white. And I thought that's strange. And you go deeper, and not all hot spots where there's Bigfoot activity, but in some, there's these places like Brown Springs or everyone's familiar with Skinwalker Ranch where it seems like this stuff seems to converge because a lot of people think of Skinwalker Ranch and they think of UFOs and all that, and that is a phenomena. But they were seeing like Dogman and Bigfoot and other like weird cryptids out there when all that was going on. They have weird paranormal like poltergeist activity, from my understanding, with stuff moving and just all this crazy stuff where it's not just one thing that's going on. It's not like they're just having cattle mutilations and stuff in the sky. It's like there's stuff on the ground happening there and in places like this. And then I looked more into Brown Springs and realized like, oh wow, there's UFO stuff. It's just all this weird stuff where it's like, why is it, how odd is it that all these really weird things are happening in the same places? And I've heard there's so many other locations too. I've heard of just, like I said, where it's like, for whatever reason, it's like all this different phenomena is occurring in the same location. And so whenever we got started with Whispers from the Woods, truly, genuinely, Whispers from the Woods was originally going to be titled, what was it, Red Dirt Bigfoot or something like that. And it was just something basic and normy like that. It was generally just going to be just a standard kind of documentary about us researching Bigfoot. That's really what it was. And that's what it was supposed to be. But we just started having weird stuff happen, filming it, and started with, in the documentary, there's that part where we interview those two witnesses, that Chad, who saw the Bigfoot when he was hunting And we were, long story short, we were walking back and they had found that cast that shows at the end of the documentary. They were like, "Do you want to see where we found that cast at, or that print where we made that cast?" And we almost said no, but we're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And so we go there, we look around. Okay, cool, that's interesting. And we start walking back towards the vehicles, and we heard this loud, insanely loud, deep guttural growl. And it sounds like it should be like right there in front of us almost. I mean, we all just stop in our tracks and we're like, at first I thought it was like a chainsaw or something like that going off. And I was like, who's cutting trees? But we keep listening and it's just a deep guttural growl. And we're just looking at each other confused. And it happens 5 times in a row. And each time the last like few kind of got quieter and it stopped. And we're trying to figure out game plan because we're like, is there an animal? There's like a berm right there by us. And we're like, Brian goes ahead and he kind of looks around the berm. I go around looking around and we don't see a thing. We find nothing. And that was when stuff started getting weird. And I remember me and Brian got in the car after that and we were talking. And Brian's a very much pre flesh and blood kind of guy. Very much isn't going to just believe something without evidence, and which is good. And it's how we all should be. That threw him through a loop, and that really started. I could see the wheels turning for him, where I feel like his perspective was starting to change. I was already leaning that way a little bit, but he was very much that thing should have been right there by us, and we couldn't see
Right.
it. And he was just telling me it's almost as if it was invisible. The whole kind of theme of the project, I guess, really started changing. And of course, the stuff that happened in Brown Springs with the EVP and everything else, it just progressively got weirder and weirder.
Yeah, it did, because when you started the doc, it just seemed like, okay, this is going to be your typical Bigfoot doc. I've seen a million of these. I'm like, okay, I'm going to still watch it though, because I met them at the cons. I'm going to see where this goes because you said something about the paranormal. So I'll keep that in mind. And then all of a sudden, about 30 minutes in, it was just so intriguing to me. I want to hear about the white lady phenomenon you're talking about.
After I had my experience, I just researched some, and there's not a whole lot out there, but there were some episodes from podcasts. I think Sasquatch Chronicles had an episode talking about a lady in white thing. Just little stories here and there. I talked to Brian about it, and Brian told me, he told me the Ape Canyon incident. He was saying that I'm going based off memory here, so I apologize if I get some information wrong. I'm not trying to, but going off the memory bank, I believe he was telling me that if you look at some of the old newspaper clippings or headings or whatever from back in the day when the whole Ape Canyon incident occurred. And for those who aren't aware, Ape Canyon, that's a very famous Bigfoot encounter where I think it was the late 1800s or something like that. There was some, I believe, miners that were in this area. I want to say it was in somewhere in Northern California, I believe. Could
Yep.
be wrong. And they had pretty much these Sasquatch throw rocks at them. And it's famously known as the Ape Canyon event or incident. He was telling me that the miners there, before that happened, we're seeing this woman in white before that incident actually took place. And I believe it was reported in some of the newspapers. And so that was really interesting to me because I've never heard of that before. And after dropping the documentary too, there's some people who commented on that. And this one guy commented too. And he was saying that, again, going off the memory brain, but he was saying that he had left a location where there's Bigfoot hotspot and was saying that something followed him home and that he saw this apparition of, I think he called it like a white witch, and of just the similar thing of this woman in white that appeared in his house, and just multiple people commenting and saying I've had similar experiences. So it's really interesting. I have no idea what the connection is exactly, but there appears to be something there, whatever it is.
That is such an interesting phenomenon. Every haunted hotel has a lady in white, and she usually is seen going down the stairs, or it's on the second floor. It's one of the two, but she's
Mhm.
always upstairs somewhere, and she usually smells like either French perfume or roses. It's pretty standard across the board. I've investigated enough hotels, and I'm like, okay, where's the lady in white? I just
Yeah.
ask because there's gonna be one.
Right.
I've never heard it in Bigfoot. That's a completely different vibe. And it makes sense in hotels. It doesn't make sense out in the woods.
I do know Brown Springs, and I've started doing more research into that and to see like what that could be. And it's interesting because I knew none of this. Obviously, people have to just take me at my word because I could just be bullshitting and just saying that. But truly, like I did not know any of this. I did not do a lot of research until after I had the Lady in White dream and everything like that. But even here recently, I started doing more, and Obviously, first of all, like Brown Springs is known, it was a body dumping grounds for the Dallas mob. There's different like ponds, I guess, and little bodies of water. Obviously, there's the springs and there's different little areas out there where I guess they would dump the bodies. But I don't think it was anything connected to that. I do think that her hair being as wet as it was, because her hair was, that's probably the main thing I remember, really remember about her appearance was how her hair was so clumpy. And the only way I could describe it, it was either just extremely like greasy, like this person had never showered or hasn't showered in months, or it was just very wet. And I would say it looked more like her hair was just extremely wet and clumpy. There's an old legend, I guess there, long story short, again, going off the memory bank here, where there's a legend, and who knows how true it is, or if there's any truth to it, because I couldn't find anything like documentation saying this actually occurred. But there's a legend that there was back in the 1800s, there was some family out there that would assault people traveling through that area, settlers or whatever, and even some of the natives as well, I believe. Sometimes I wonder if there's any truth to that. I kind of wonder, is that what that was? Like, was that a woman who had been, because her dress was very 1800s to me, it looked like she just looked like someone from back in that time period to me. And the whole paint down her face too, like she had this sort of native look to her. So I wonder if that's what that was, if she was like unfortunately like a victim of some type of attack or something, and her body was maybe dumped in the water out there. There's a river that runs through that area. There's different little ponds and swampy areas. So I don't know. I'm full on speculating when it comes to that, but I do wonder about that. I do wonder if that's what that was.
It's interesting too that in the 1800s it's supposed to be a dumping site or like a place for assault where people are drowned, obviously, or their lives taken. And then later on it becomes a dumping site again.
Mhm.
It's almost like the ground accepted its fate or something. That's what it became. Hey, let's put it out here because that's where it feels like it should happen because it's already happened. It's almost like a memory.
Right. It's like just attracting it at that point, I guess, or
Yeah,
something.
because now it's become that. And so
Right.
when you think of dumping bodies, you're like, oh, the energy is here already. So let's do it here, not knowing that's the energy.
Brown Springs is such a weird, uh, uh, and to each their own. I understand that's highly subjective to say, but for me personally, like it has a very weird kind of vibe to it. And I know it's okay, but people say that all the time about all these places. And I've been to some creepy places, and there's places where you can just feel that type of that, I guess that type of energy or whatever you want to call it. You can really feel it at Brown Springs. Even people who aren't all into that stuff, I've heard say, yeah, it's got a really creepy, weird vibe. I think even without even knowing the history, you can feel it and sense it. But yeah, it's a lot of weird stuff out there. It's creepy.
Brown Springs, there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings out there too, right?
That's my understanding. Yeah, Brown Springs has a history of Bigfoot reports. That's why I really wanted Tex in the documentary as well, because Tex, he does a lot of research out there, and that's really his area, I would say, where he's done a lot of work and stuff. And that's how I know about a lot of the activity and stuff, is he's done a lot of work and research, and I think he's taken a lot of reports from over there. But yeah, Brown Springs is known to be a little hotspot there for Bigfoot activity. I think even there's some dogman sightings as well, which is interesting. So again, it's just a plethora of different stuff.
You've done way more Bigfoot stuff than I have, but I've noticed anywhere on the land where I've gone where there's always UFOs and then there's always the other thing too is people always see tall men like the with horns or without horns. They always see
Mhm.
the shadow man is really a like a strong one. So we have that.
Mhm.
So we have UFOs. And then usually there's always some kind of rituals that happen there. Like people do ritual there in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
They're all over. Like from I've investigated from California to like Tennessee and there's just and then I've heard about places in Pennsylvania. So there's like these little spots. Why do you think that the Bigfoot phenomenon is also there? Because usually Bigfoot isn't considered paranormal. It's considered, like you said, what did you say, blood and
Flesh and blood, yeah.
flesh and blood. So why do you
Right.
think that it's they congregate there?
I wish I
I
knew. I
know.
really don't. There's so many different theories I toy around with in my head all the time when it comes to that. Sometimes I do just want to go full woo. and just be like, yes, like they're interdimensional, blah, blah, blah. Because sometimes it's just, I will say this, at the end of the day, what I simply say when people ask me what I think they are, I just say there's something more to them. I don't, and I know that's super vague and doesn't answer anything and it's very unclear, but that's really all there. I just think there's something to them that I do not think that they're just a normal animal. I do not think that they're just a primate. I definitely do not think that. I think if they are really just a purely natural anything, I would say they're some type of ancient human. And that's just based off to you talk to most eyewitnesses. I would argue that the large majority of really credible eyewitnesses that have had really good Class A sightings of these things. Now, obviously, there's exceptions too, and you can't ignore that, where people do say they look very primate. I would say a large, very large portion, possibly the majority of really good credible Class A reports describe them as being very, just being tall, hairy humans, like very human-like faces, things like this. But either way, I think they are flesh and blood. I think they're physical, but I think they just have certain abilities that we don't understand. And what I think is very interesting, I listened to the telepathy tapes. I've realized like if you're going to understand the woo, and because become my goal with this is I really don't even like the term the woo, but I think as researchers, we're doing a huge disservice when it comes to the Bigfoot world. We're doing a huge disservice by mocking people, ridiculing people who have had these strange encounters, experiences. I think there's a lot of people out there that have a very outdated view of what science is, and they think science doesn't cover the weird stuff like telepathy, like I was just saying with the telepathy tapes. And you start going to parapsychology and you realize for decades upon decades now, people, scientists, researchers have been studying this phenomena, and it's not just some made up nonsense. This is a real phenomena that people have and that people experience. And it's just, like I said, it's very outdated, archaic viewpoint to think that stuff like that isn't science. It's hard to study stuff like that because it's not a chemical reaction. You can't put that in a test tube and make it happen. Repeatability is tough when it comes to stuff like that because it's not that simple. That type of phenomenon you can't make something like that happen, but it doesn't change the fact that it's real and it happens. And like Bigfoot and the mind speak thing, and this is something other researchers have pointed out, is some people think that there is a possible connection to that when people talk about like autistic savants that can communicate telepathically and do that. Some people think that these creatures are the same thing. There's some things with their behavior that gets reported where some researchers have come to that conclusion that they are autistic savants essentially that can engage in these telepathic abilities that they've probably, again, speculation, can't prove this, but they theoretically could have been doing for hundreds of years, thousands of years, however long they've been around, and perfecting that and doing that. And I don't know, that's pure speculation, but I do think that there are some type of physical creature that just has these really special abilities that we don't fully understand. I think it's very much natural. I don't think it's something that's like I don't know, I don't think they're doing it by like technology or anything like that. I think this is just something that they can do. They have this ability. I think humans probably at some point had that ability as well, a long time ago, maybe to a more fuller extent. But anyway, yeah. But there's so many other theories too. I know Jason McLean, who I interview, talks about that, him and Tex, how there's a lot of things that get called Bigfoot that may not necessarily be Bigfoot. And they use a really good example of if you were to see in a building a tall, dark, shadowy figure and stuff was getting thrown at you, everyone would call that some type of spiritual something, some type of a ghost or an entity of some kind or whatever. But if it happens in the woods, if you see a tall, dark, shadowy figure in the tree line and you start having rocks thrown at you, then it's Bigfoot. And they think that the thing that they bring up, which I think is a really good point, is why are we necessarily calling it Bigfoot? It may not be Bigfoot. It may be a whole other category. It may be something paranormal. So that's another thing to consider too, is because you do have the reports where these things are seen doing very natural, animalistic type things like eating roadkill off the side of the road, just simple road crossings, just doing stuff like that, which is very much, like I said, this natural, something you'd expect from a physical species of creatures that are just very normal. But there's other stuff too, the mind speak, the other weird stuff, the cloaking or whatever. all the different weird high strangeness, the lights, those strange light phenomena, that could be a whole different category that we're confusing. It may not be that it comes from the Sasquatch or whatever. It could be a whole separate phenomena going on that we don't understand. So I
Yeah,
don't.
that does make sense because, like I said, the tall man phenomenon is very prevalent in these same areas, and that's a like a shadow-like figure that people see, and sometimes they see them with red eyes, sometimes they see them with horns, but it's
Mhm.
always some kind of man figure. Not that I've never heard of anybody actually interacting with it. It's more off in the distance or it just shows up and then it goes away, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't throw rocks or that it hasn't. That's a good point because you automatically assume if it's tall and a little aggressive, it's going to be Bigfoot.
I think it very well could be just paranormal phenomena going
Yeah.
on in a different setting that we're not used to. And anything weird that happens in the woods, it's Bigfoot. And that may not be the case. It could be, like I said, whole other category that we don't fully understand.
Yeah.
But I do wonder why the stuff converges, and I just really have no idea. I have no idea why. I don't think it's all the same thing. I think it could be connected in some way. I don't know if it's something about the land in those areas where it draws them in. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they are interdimensional, and that area might just be, I don't know how to word this, like thin.
Yeah.
The veil is thin, but that's something I'm trying to hopefully get answers for one day. And that's been, like I said, that's become my niche within the group, is incorporating some of the paranormal research methods, so to speak, EMF meters, EVP work, stuff like that. I think this is stuff that we can do in the field and try to document too. If someone has a sighting, or if you have an incident where you're in a hot spot and rocks or something gets thrown at you or whatever, how interesting would it be if you could document changes in an EMF spike at the same time? Or a lot of teams carry the lightning detectors now, and that's something that we've been doing as well. It's very interesting. Like, we'll get crazy hits, like 12 lightning strikes on the lightning detector. There's no storms near us for miles. And a lot of times it coincides with something weird happening, like a noise or a tree knock or something like that. Stuff like that. I just want to try to document things like that. So it's no longer just stories and no longer just I had this weird feeling or something like that. If we can document readings like that, I feel like it doesn't prove anything ultimately, but if we can start getting patterns and things like that, I think it could really help things research wise.
When that EVP happened, it's very loud and very clear.
Hmm.
You don't even have to turn up the volume. It sounds like somebody's standing next to you talking on the recorder. Did you feel anything? Did you have any kind of like anything? Were you in a weird space or?
I was definitely creeped out. I was definitely on edge because we're back at this place. I had always attributed my dream to being something that followed me from that cemetery, and I just innately knew it was something from that. I was a little, I guess, nervous being there, excited but nervous because it's okay, we're back here. And like I knew like I'm going there to do like an EVP session. And because last time I went there for the first documentary, I went there to film B-roll. We didn't do any investigation at the cemetery or anything like that. We just knew it was an old cemetery. We knew that the springs were there. We knew that there was reports there of different stuff. And we just went there to get B-roll. That's it. This time I'm like, I'm going there for real to find some answers, so to speak, without, I know that sounds corny, but I'm trying to do some actual research this time and not be afraid of anything. But it was spooky. I don't remember feeling weird or anything like that. I just Nothing. I know, what I do think is interesting is, and it's hard to say for sure if it's linked to this, but when you watch that part of the documentary, it's interesting because as soon as that EVP happens, Brian talks about getting RF frequency on his EMF meter. He was getting some hits and getting some readings. It was like right after that, he starts talking about, I'm getting some interesting readings on the RF. It's just another thing we've noticed too is like in some places we get some high, just random radio frequency readings on our equipment, which you got to be careful of because, again, I think it's important as researchers, and it's something I'm learning. RF, if you got a phone nearby, and I highly recommend if you're going to have someone on like your team, and this goes for anything, if you're doing any type of like paranormal or whatever, if you're going to have an EMF meter or like a tri-field meter that measures radio frequency, like I feel like the person that has it should not have a phone, should not have any type of anything like no walkie-talkie or anything like that. Because anything that can receive a signal
Mm.
RF is super sensitive. It's on the lower end. My understanding, it's on the lower end of the EMF spectrum. So like milligauss, you have to get higher readings to get a milligauss hit. But like RF, just getting a text message on your phone, you'll get an RF spike. You have to be careful with that. But Brian, it is interesting because once we get that EVP, Brian starts talking about that getting some RF hits. So it is something we've noticed and something we pay attention to is radio frequency readings as well as obviously the milligauss and just magnetic discrepancies or whatever. But yeah, I don't remember feeling weird. I don't remember just nervous. And I remember going back and I was just editing the documentary and I was at that portion, I was just putting together the nighttime portion, obviously the nighttime investigation of Brown Springs because that's when the EVP occurred. And I heard it multiple times. I just kept ignoring it because I just thought it was me talking because the voice sounds like me. And I had to talk to, or at least I feel like it sounded like me. And
Doesn't.
uh, you don't think so? Okay. Because I
Not at
asked
all.
Brian and Eric so many times, I was like, guys, before we present this in a documentary, I want to make sure, does this sound like me? And they were like, dude, it does not sound like you. And I'm like, okay, because I feel like it sounds like me quite a bit.
Doesn't.
But so that makes me feel better because some people are like, I don't know. But anyway, but either way, too, I mean, like mimics is a real thing too as well. And I feel like if it was something trying to like, and that's a kind of a sidebar too, but like I do feel like if something was trying to influence my thought or put a thought in my head, I feel like it would make sense for it to sort of mimic my voice, so to speak. I don't know. That's again, that's more speculation. But anyway, I was sitting there and I just thought it was just me saying something. And I'm like, what am I saying there? And I remember I took the clip, I isolated it, I turned the volume up, and I just the voice, and it's just say this place is haunted. And I'm like, why would I say that? Like, why in the world would I just randomly say in the middle? Because I remember that night pretty clearly, and I do not remember saying anything during that portion. I just remember me holding the camera and filming Brian and being focused on filming Brian because we're filming at nighttime. We don't have like IR cameras or night vision cameras or anything like that. We have green flashlights that were pointing at us while we're walking at night and it has autofocus. Anyone who knows how cameras work, it's really easy for the autofocus on the cameras to get blurry, and especially if you got multiple lights and stuff like that, and lights from other cameras or people's phones or something like that, and or other pieces of equipment, it'll make it super blurry. So I just know I'm walking at nighttime and I'm got this really expensive $2,000 camera in my hand. Like I'm focused on filming Brian and that's it, and making sure he stays in shot. I'm not randomly talking to myself saying, say this place is haunted. So I know it wasn't me. I know for sure it wasn't Brian. I know it wasn't Eric or anyone else. So it just really confused me when I heard that and I just kept listening to it and listening to it. And I sent it to Brian, I sent it to Eric, and we had that meeting that's on the documentary where we discussed it. And none of us could figure it out. And then Brian puts it on the spectrogram. And that was the thing that kind of cemented it for me was how it looked on the spectrogram. Because like you were saying, it comes in so it's a quieter voice, but it still comes in so loud and clear. Where to me, and it's coming through on Brian's his lapel mic because we're using DJI. I wasn't wearing a lapel mic. Brian was the only one wearing a lapel mic, and because we had lost the other one actually prior, and so we only had one lapel mic at that time. Brian had it on his rig that he was wearing, and whatever it was to me sounded like it was something right by, like almost talking into his lapel
Mhm.
mic, which I thought was super interesting because it was just how clear it was. It wasn't, it was a quieter voice, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it's like a whisper. It sounded like just someone talking at a lower tone, say this place is haunted. And I don't know, it was super strange. And but when he put it on the spectrogram, to me, I could be wrong, but I feel like that voice with how loud it was, it should have showed what we talk about in the documentary, how when you put like a normal voice on a spectrogram, it shows the different vocal layers. Because obviously we as people have vocal cords and our voices hit different tones and different frequencies at the same time when we speak. So like Brian, he shows it on documentary. As soon as he talks, you can see the whole screen, the spectrograph light up, and you can see the different layers of his voice. Whereas this thing, when it speaks as loud and clear as it is, three purple dots on the screen where it's you can almost barely see it. It barely has an audio signature. And I talked to researchers. I talked to Ron Cross of Pros about that, and he was saying that's a normal thing, so to speak, when it comes to EVPs. Is that a lot of times it doesn't even though it's a clear voice, it doesn't show all the time as like a normal human vocal audio signature like you would expect it to. But yeah, it was strange for sure.
Yeah, it was because You can hear it clearly. You didn't even have to change the audio or anything, but it does. It sounds, I thought, before you explain it, I thought it was whoever was holding the camera or the mic and they were just mumbling to themselves. But if it's on somebody else's gear, the other people in you're on your team have really low voices.
Yeah.
It's obviously not one of them. It's more of a younger voice. That's the only way I can describe it.
Brian and Eric said the same thing. Brian thought it was almost, he said it almost sounded kind of like mocking. It was, say this place is haunted or something like that. Like just the way it said it, he thought it sounded a little like it was messing with us or something like that or
Yeah,
something.
it did. A little
Yeah.
trickstery.
Yeah. But yeah, no, someone else commented that too. So I feel like it could have been someone mumbling, but again, I did not have a lapel mic. And again, I know that means nothing because it's like you just have to take me at my word that I didn't have a lapel mic. But Brian was the only one that had the lapel mic. And with how clear that voice came in, it was something right by his lapel mic, I feel. It was, if it even worked that way. Because when you look at EVP phenomena too, it's like there's a lot of research that suggests it's not, and maybe you know more about this and you can correct me, but it's not necessarily like when I speak into a recorder, my voice gets turned into like an electrical signature and then it goes into the audio file or whatever, and that's how it gets documented recorded on the recorder or something. Or if I'm using like a tape recorder, it speaks, it gets put onto the audio tape like that. But it's like these things when a lot of EVPs with how it shows up on spectrographs or whatever, and obviously you don't hear it with your physical ear, but how loud it is, it's like I should have. There's a lot of researchers and people when it comes to like people who specialize in EVPs where it's like they theorize like it gets implanted strictly to the audio file. It's like somehow they're able to do like an impression on the audio file that's like an impression of their voice. However, they're able to do that, I don't know. But to me, that's what I feel like it
Yeah.
is.
The other thing too is none of you reacted to it. See,
Exactly.
that's what I find that's interesting too, because if somebody said, say this place is haunted, somebody would say, what are you talking about? Or they would say this place is haunted and laugh it off. Like, why are
Right.
you saying that? You know what I mean? And there's
Yeah.
no reaction from anybody.
That's what I was thinking too. There was no reason for any of us to just randomly be like, everyone's just in there walking the woods. We're getting ready to investigate. We're trying to catch up with us, the rest of the group. Brian, we're out of breath. We're walking. It's like, why in the world would anyone just randomly be like, say this place is haunted? It's just such a
It's just
random.
out of left field, yeah. And then
Yeah.
what I find interesting though, and I wonder what you think about this phenomenon, is that later on somebody actually says that in a sentence, or is it you that says it?
It's me. And again, that's when it got really weird because it was after the Zoom meeting we discovered this, but we had that Zoom meeting where Brian showed on the spectrogram and I was like, yeah, it's pretty weird. It's a possible EVP. It's creepy. Like, definitely excited that we caught something like that. And I think it was the next day or a couple days later, I get a message from Brian while I'm on lunch at work, and it's just an audio file. And so, so that EVP that we captured, that was early on in our investigation, we're walking around, about to head towards the cemetery. And we weren't actually at the cemetery yet. We were at there's the springs at the base of the cemetery. You have to go uphill up into the cemetery. We were at the base of it. So we hadn't actually got there yet. We were by the springs. That's why you can hear like the water moving in the background. That's the spring water. And 30 minutes later, we go into the cemetery and we do the EVP session because we had that recorder. Gosh, it wasn't the DR60, but it was something similar to that a lot of people swear by or whatever. And so we're like, we gotta try it. We gotta see if we can get some EVP stuff. And so we go up there, and Brian, if I'm recalling this correctly, he had an audio recorder on his chest rig as well. We didn't get any EVPs. We didn't get any voices or anything from that recorder from the EVP session. We had some other interesting things happen out there, but we didn't have any, at least we thought we didn't have any EVPs. But Brian, I guess he went back and listened to the audio from his audio recorder during that session that we're doing the EVPs, and he just sent me the clip from that. And it's me starting off the EVP session. And like I said, I don't remember feeling weird or anything like that, but I do remember when I was beginning that session, I was like, how do I start this off? Like, I don't know what to say, which I thought was interesting. Looking back in retrospect, I thought that was interesting because, like, I've done EVP sessions many times. I always do and say the same exact thing. This is Coleman at this area here at this time, the EVP session number 1 or 2, and it's just so I can keep track of when I go back and listen to them, I know which file it is and where I'm at and all that. But for some reason, I was like confused and I was like, I don't know how to start this or what to say. And so what just came to my mind at that point was a lot of people say this place is haunted. That's what I said is a lot of people say this place is haunted. And that was 30 minutes after, around 30, 45 minutes after we caught that EVP, and we had no idea. No one knew, obviously, until months later when I went home to start editing the documentary after we had done finished filming at Brown Springs and putting everything together when I realized we had that EVP. So something 30 minutes prior, spoken to the I say spoken to the lapel mic. However, it put its voice into the audio file or the recording on the camera or on the mic, spoke and said, "Say this place is haunted." No, none of us heard it. And then 30 minutes later, I'm trying to start an EVP session, and the only thing that comes to mind to start it is a lot of people say this place is haunted. And so that was just, again, that's like up there with a Lady in White dream where it's, oh my gosh, what could that be coincidence? Sure, it could be. But at the same time, I wonder, my theory is I picked that up on the subconscious level, and maybe it wanted me to say that. And that's another thing me and Eric and Brian were talking about, and Eric brought up a good point. He was like, maybe that's like the key or something like that. It's like they want that acknowledgement or something like that of like someone saying this place is haunted, or I don't know, but it's like they just whatever it was wanted me to say that is what I personally feel, and I said it. I don't know. I know that sounds so weird, but that's the only thing I can really speculate on and theorize as to why that happened.
I wonder about this too, do you think it's some kind of time dilation where it might have been you on the recording?
Yeah, honestly,
Like where you're picking up on your own feedback loop?
yeah. Brian said something like that too. He was like, "Is it like a time loop or something?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "It could be. Yeah, it could be." I went to, and I don't know if this is the same thing. And again, all this, it's like there could be other explanations for it. I acknowledge that. I try to hard to be good with my research and not just be like, "Oh, something weird happened. It's paranormal." But it does remind me of experience I had way prior to that, where, oh gosh, what was it? Me and Brian were at some cemetery in Enid. I think it's like Black Bear Cemetery or something like that. And it has a reputation of being haunted. And there's like an old abandoned church there where there's like rumors that people have gone out there and done rituals or something like that. But this was a weird thing that happened. I have a video about it. I can post it on YouTube at some point. I made like a little short video on it, like a minute long, just talking about it because I thought it was really interesting. But long story short, I went out there and I did an EVP session on my recorder, and this is the only time this has ever happened on this recorder. I've done numerous sessions on this recorder. But I start off, I do the Brian's with me. I start the EVP session off and I say, I do my thing. This is Coleman at blah, 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 blah. I'm at Black Bear Cemetery in Enid. This is EVP session number one or whatever. And I ask my questions and I wrap up. I finish up the session and I go back to listen to it. And it starts off, I hit play and I'm listening to it and it goes into me and it's me talking and saying stuff that I was saying like 5 or 10 minutes into the EVP session is like some random sentence I was saying, and then it stops and then it plays the beginning portion of the EVP where I'm like, this is Coleman, and it's like, how does that even happen? And I've done research on it, and I guess it's possible, but it's a rare thing that some people experience or when they have like malfunctions on the recorders. But it was just the weirdest thing. So it's not quite the same level as what happened at Brown Springs, but it's like I don't know. It's just how audio like that gets mixed up from stuff that happened 10 minutes after the fact and it's in the beginning part of the recording, and then the stuff that's in the beginning, the recording's at the end. It's like everything's all jumbled up.
Those time things always happen in these weird locations. They're never they don't happen in your
Exactly.
living room, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
They always happen in these hot spots or these places that are really, like you said, they're like, what did you say they were? I forgot what you said, but they're the soft spots. They're
Oh yeah, where the veil is thin or
the veil
whatever.
is thin. That's what you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It always happens in those kinds of places where it seems like time is fluctuating to a little bit, or there's always some kind of situation. I just had a situation like that happen too, where I hooked somebody up to, we did an SD session and he'd never done it before. And so I had two people that had never done an SD session and they were talking to each other, and one was asking questions and the other one was answering or having a conversation, and they synced up. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is
Mhm.
getting a little bit too real. But in the middle of the conversation, the person asked, does this have anything to do with time? Or is there any kind of like feedback loops with time in haunted locations? And the person with the headphones on and said, maybe.
Yeah.
And then there's a space, and then the guy says firewall birds. And we were like, that makes no sense whatsoever. And then he said one other thing about clarity and time. And I was
Hmm.
like, that doesn't make any sense. But like, why at that specific time when we were asking about timing and dilation and feedback loops, is that the words that he gave us? So about 45 minutes goes on, and I'm talking to the person who was asking the questions. And the other person is standing next to him, and he doesn't know what he said because he was out of it. The person starts showing me pictures of birds, and they're in Hawaii. And then his wife is standing next to him talking about these fiery walls of volcanoes in Hawaii. And I just went, wait, what is going on?
Yeah.
What is going on right now? Because this is exactly what he said in the SD session. He's sitting there and he has no idea that I'm having this moment. And I went, wait, you guys, stop. We're literally syncing up with the SD session. Does nobody even realize that?
Mm.
And then the person who was asking the question, he's, wait a minute. He goes to his wife. He goes, what did you just say? And she goes, a fiery wall. It's a volcano. And he looks
Hmm.
down at his birds. He goes, oh my God, that's it right there. It was like almost like in real time, the whoever we were speaking to was showing us that
It's like give an example
there
to,
is a time something that
yeah.
happens.
Believe it for sure, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it makes sense too if I've heard people say in the spirit world or whatever, in that dimension, time isn't linear like it is here for
Yeah.
in this physical sort of level of existence we experience. And so if things are thinner, so to speak, in those areas or those hot spots, it's okay. Does that expression of time come in too, where it's like their experience of how it's not this, like I said, linear. This happens like we're just having this forward time experience going forward and then the past and all that. But like for them, I feel like it's more flexible than that. And when I talk to other researchers, that's their view as well. It's however they experience it. Obviously, we don't know, but it's interesting. It's so could that be what's going on? Is just like I said, that more flexible experience of time is maybe taking place in those places. Who knows?
Yeah, it's such an interesting phenomenon too, because that's what I thought when later on you're talking about how you said it in the recorder. I'm like, what if it's trying to show you that like you're all in the bubble?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're
Right.
all in this little bubble space and everything is bouncing off of each other or something. I don't know. It was a weird thing. The last thing I want to ask you is, why do you think it's you that's having the experiences? Because I have noticed that where everyone else is, and it's you, it's always you. Because the other experience that we didn't talk about, I don't want to give away the whole documentary, but I was noticed too. I was like, the phenomenon is focusing on him. Why him? What is it about
Mhm.
you?
I don't know. It's interesting you bring that up because I had this conversation with another member of the group, and I can't say his name because he likes to remain anonymous or whatever. But he was actually there at Brown Springs with us when that happened, and he I can't, like I said, I can't go into it, but he's had a very interesting life, and he's had a lot of very strange stuff happen to him. And I just believe, and I'm not saying I'm one of these people, I don't know. I've heard people say it's your aura, where it's things are attracted by your aura. I've heard that from a lot of different people. I think some people, I call them like lighthouses, I guess. And I had that conversation with this friend of mine who's in the group. Is I told him, I was like, dude, I think you're a lighthouse. I just feel like whatever it is about that person, whether it's their aura or like just their soul or something like that, it's like there's something very, and again, I'm not saying this about me, but for people like him and others, it's like stuff's just attractive to them. And it's just, it could be like they're just more sensitive to it and they're just that reality is around us all the time. And some people just don't pick up on it and other people do. Some people I feel like are, like I said, they're just lighthouses. They're just like beacons. It's like these things are just very attracted to them. And maybe it's because they know they can pick up on them and like they are sensitive or something. And it's like they know if they wanted to be seen or be acknowledged, like it's more likely to be done with this person or this group of people or whatever. But I don't know what it is. For me, I really don't know. There's something with Brown Springs for sure where I feel like that area, it does feel like every time I go there, and it's usually not something that happens while I'm there, like both like the dream, for example. It's like me after the fact, a week later, I'm coming back from that area, I have the dream, and like me coming back from Brown Springs, thinking that we didn't really get much, and then lo and behold, there's this Class A EVP of something saying something that I said 30 minutes before I even said it. And so it's, I don't know, it's like maybe it is frequency or something. Maybe it's just, there's just things just mesh when you go to certain areas and it's just, you just harmonize or something. I don't know. It's pure speculation on my end, but I think a lot of it, like I said, I think some people are just very unique and special. And I think some people are just very much either in tune or there's just something about them that things are attracted to.
Yeah, because the other thing I did notice, I mean, there's only 2 incidences on your doc, but it made me think, yeah, there's something about that because it's not just the experience happens to you, it's interactive. It's very okay, you are now officially part of it. We're going to take you and we're going to make you part of it's almost like I said, it's almost like a feedback loop because we're going to mess with you and we're going to use you as
Yeah.
the stand-in for whatever we need to happen. So it's not just I've met people that are like the activity always happens around them. So you're like, stay with this person because that's where it's going to happen. But it's not interactive. And like with you, it's very much you are the phenomenon or you are part of the phenomenon. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like
It's not as an
something.
observer. You are literally it. You are it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that a lot, and I've been studying parapsychology, or psychological research, however you say that, where it's like there's something about the person, and something I've noticed too, going to places. I've been to places where, gosh, I went to the Garnett House a while back, and as a sidebar, it's also interesting. Some of the best EVPs I've ever gotten has been just on my camera's audio, on the shotgun mic or with the lapel mics. Like I've done stuff on the recorder sessions, but like some of the best stuff I've ever gotten, like audio wise or whatever, we captured full on like children humming and singing and stuff on the shotgun mic of my camera or the camera I was using. And so the interesting sidebar for researchers or whatever, pay attention to your camera's audio because it's like you will pick up stuff if you're paying attention. But anyway, like I was saying, like Garnett House, I go there and there's certain people there and it's just like stuff's happening, stuff's being like literally thrown at me. You're hearing stuff, like all this crazy stuff is going on, and then it's like you go back and it's just nothing. It's just
Hmm.
absolutely quiet as can be. Maybe a little noise here and there, but and then you have the case of what was it, the Perrin family, I believe, at the Conjuring
Hmm.
house. And it's like they have all this activity happening around them, and it's like you hear that story over and over. It's like it happens to them, and then they leave, and these other families move in, and nothing happens. And people are
Right.
like, "Well, it's not haunted." It's no, it could be something like about that family or about that group, where it's like something about them, whatever it is, and that environment helps trigger and makes that stuff happen somehow. So I definitely agree with you and what you're saying is there's something about when it comes to that equation of paranormal activity, I feel like a lot of it is like who's there
Yeah.
and for whatever reason that is for sure.
Yeah, and it's you. It's you. Now we know if you ever investigate with Coleman, you stand next to him because something's gonna happen. You're that person.
Maybe, yeah. At least in some
But
places, maybe, yeah.
you're the one that's documenting it. So
Mhm.
that makes it more interesting because you're no longer you're it's like weird. You're like you are the observer, but you're also the phenomenon. So how does
Mm.
that work?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Because how much is of you how it's almost I always say this, but it's almost like you observing it is creating it in a way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For
which
sure.
which is interesting because what is it about your energy or your frequency that dials it up
Right.
without even realizing it because all you're doing is just observing.
It's super fast. Yeah. Like I said, I go back and forth on it all the time. And hopefully, like I said, the more I don't know, I don't think we'll ever fully understand this, but again, as corny as it sounds, maybe we can get some answers or something. I don't know, but I do just enjoy documenting the evidence and just it is cool having those experiences and stuff. And like I said, my main thing is just I think people need to have a more open mind when specifically the Bigfoot world. I think people just need to, and I'm not trying to get on my soapbox here, but I think we need to just embrace the fact that Bigfoot is such a weird crypt, such a, I don't know, paranormal. It really is by definition paranormal. We're talking about, we're going on the woods looking for forest giants, and like people are very much against the idea for whatever reason that are out in the woods looking for forest giants, that there's no way that there's no way that there's any paranormal aspect to these things, man. These are just flesh and blood. They eat, they sleep, that's it. And it's like we're talking about 8 foot, 9 foot tall creatures out in the woods that people see almost in every state in the United States, and not just in the United States, across the world. Different countries have their own version and stuff. In Vietnam, and obviously, you have the Yeti and the Himalayas and all this stuff. In Australia, you have the Yowie. This is like a global phenomenon, and we have yet to be able to prove that these things exist. And it's like, why is that? With how many people see these things, all the stories of people shooting at these things, even if you wanted to say government conspiracy and all this, which I'm not saying that's not a real thing, but even with all that, I feel if we were really just talking about primates here, if we were just really talking about a North American primate, I feel like someone would have been able to get past all that and prove that these things are real. Someone would have been able by now to get a body to the right person, to the right researcher, to a real credible person, and despite all those things, prove that these things are real. But that hasn't happened. And I think at this point, I think we need to start being a little bit more open-minded to the fact that this is a real phenomena. People are experiencing it. There is a physical aspect to it for sure, 100%. These things leave footprints, scat, hair, blood, even, you name it, and all this stuff. And they very much act like real physical creatures. They're seen near creeks and rivers. They do things that are totally what you would expect a lot of times of, like I said, a physical population of species of creatures, whatever they are, humans or whatever. But at the same time, they are very elusive and they do these weird things and can, according to many credible eyewitnesses, can telepathically speak to people and all this other stuff. And then you have all this other strange phenomena of the strange lights was a big thing. There's tons of research out there, even researchers who aren't part of the woo camp who have experienced that and seen the lights. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, it's are we limiting ourselves as researchers by being so close-minded to this? And I feel like the more science goes on and stuff about interdimensional stuff and quantum physics and all this stuff, and that I'm totally not qualified to speak on, it's like we realize reality is very strange and very weird, and there's so much stuff that we don't fully understand. And I feel like whatever these things are fall into that category. I think they are, like I said, a very much a physical thing, physical creatures, but I think that they have strange abilities that we don't understand, but it's natural for them. It's just something that's part of what they do. But there's also, like I was telling you earlier, I think there's also this paranormal category where it's stuff that is purely paranormal, that is purely spiritual in some shape or form, that people are experiencing out in the woods and places like this, these type of settings that aren't the typical haunted house, quote unquote, setting. And I think that is a real thing as well. And I think that's getting confused as Bigfoot or confused as Sasquatch. And I think it's possible that we need to have stronger, clearer categories and be a little bit more open-minded towards that as well. And thinking people can experience spiritual haunting type phenomena even out in the woods. There's no reason to think that this is something that just happens in old abandoned haunted houses. This stuff can obviously Brown Springs, for example, like this stuff happens in multiple different settings and environments, and it's something that we need to be aware of as well. And if you aren't familiar with those categories as a researcher, how are you going to know that? If your category is just Bigfoot and then nonsense paranormal stuff, those are your two categories. It's like you can't really filter things. You can't really look at things and dissect them in a consistent, good research type way. So that's my main thing. I just feel like people need to be a little more open-minded and just embrace the fact that Bigfoot's a weird subject. Bigfoot falls into high strangeness, whether people like that or not. And I think we just need to look at other means of collecting evidence, other means of research, and just see what happens.
Yeah, there has to be some crossover because for a while there, it was like we have Bigfoot, we have UFOs, and we have the paranormal. And then psychics are somewhere over there. Everybody hates them. But it's
Pretty much, yeah.
once the UFO people start talking to the paranormal people, start talking to the Bigfoot people, we're all having the same experiences. And those psychics over there, all I told you. So it's such a it's not all the same, but there's a lot of overlap. There's just a lot of you can't just parse one out and say this is the one true thing. I don't think. I think that's too simplistic. It's
I
not.
agree.
There's too many factors.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if people want to watch your documentary, where can they find it?
It is on, if you go on YouTube and look up Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations, it's just right there on YouTube. It's Whispers from the Woods. And that's where I'm focusing most of my work right now. I did have a other YouTube channel. I haven't really uploaded that in forever. So I would say if you're interested in anything I'm doing, just subscribe to Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations and be on the lookout. That's going to be where most of my projects are going to be going forward for the time being for a while. So we got a lot in store, a lot planned, a lot being worked on right now. So I'm very excited. But yeah, definitely go to Red Dirt Cryptid, subscribe, do all the cool YouTube stuff, and check out the documentary.
And what do you have next? What's coming up? Did you put something out just recently again?
Brian did, yeah, we did a thing at Mohawk Park in Tulsa.
That's what it was,
And
yes.
yeah, and I directed and edited Whispers from the Woods. That's my child, so to speak. I put a lot of time and effort in that. But so Whispers from the Woods, I directed and edited that and filmed that with some help, of course. And then the Mohawk Park video was mainly Brian doing all the editing or whatever. But I am in that video. But yeah, that's another place again where it's like stuff again converges. There's a lot of weird stuff going on at Mohawk Park. There's deer woman sightings. There's rumors of little people going on out there. There's lots of really awful tragedies out there. There's been like multiple bodies found over the years at Mohawk with no arrest or anything like that being made, but just multiple remains being found over the years, even as recent as I think like, oh gosh, maybe like a year or two ago, I think it
Oh,
was the
wow.
most recent body. So yeah, so just a dark vibe to it. Rumors of rituals going on out there.
Always.
Yeah, and so it's usually how it goes. And so we put that out mainly because we're trying to get more information on that. We want to learn more about if people have had encounters out there because a lot of stuff is rumors. And so what we'd like to do is to get some more like concrete answers of putting it out there. It's like, hey, have you had an experience out there, whether it be cryptid or paranormal or whatever, anything really? Or if you've seen these rituals, have you found these ritual sites or anything like that? Because it's very odd. But yeah, we're just hoping that information will start to trickle in as a result of that video. But yeah, definitely check that out as well.
Do you have any other projects that are just you that you're doing right now? Or do you have another documentary coming out or anything like that?
We're currently working on a Dogman documentary.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's next in the line. We're working on that slowly but surely. What I'm super excited about is after that, it's all in on the Brown Springs documentary, and that's something I've been wanting to do for a very long time. But especially after this most recent documentary, I've decided like that's gonna be my next big project that I'm gonna want to steer the ship on is that I'm super passionate about that, and I feel like Brown Springs has so much potential and really deserves its own project. And so my goal with that is to get deep on the research end of that. From a historical perspective, I want to go through and see if I can verify any of the reports of some of the legends and stuff like I was telling you about earlier, but just seeing what from a historical perspective what we can confirm and the legends and everything and some of the folklore attached to that area, but also just spending a good amount of time, maybe doing multiple investigations there over the course of months or whatever, and just collecting as much evidence as possible because I just feel like that whole area has so much potential. But I would like to do just like a full-on multiple night investigation at that cemetery and collect more audio, do more EVP stuff. I just feel like there's so much potential there. So that's going to be next on the list, and I'm super excited about that one.
Very cool. This has been a great interview. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the NVus Alien Podcast. For show notes, go to the website www.nvusalien.com. All of the reference materials and mentions in this episode are linked there. If you want more witchy, paranormal, and fringe content, please subscribe to my Substack. Just search Heather Ashera, that's Heather Ashera, or check the link in the show notes. And as always, see you on the flip side.